All right, welcome to week 3 reading lecture. So we're going to talk about a story called Edison, New Jersey, and then we also have a reading for our journal this week on economic inequality. So I won't say too much about the economic inequality reading, but do take a look at that. Again, the journals are, I'd like you to do them. To me, I would want to do them each week, but it's not required because you're not handing those in unless it's our reading summary, and that's our story Edison, New Jersey this week. So some weeks we'll have a short story, and some weeks we'll have uh, a nonfiction reading for both the journal and the reading summary. But for this week, we have a fictional story for our reading summary, and then the economic inequality nonfiction for for our journal. And again, journal's not due, but I would recommend starting those. All right, so the story Edison, New Jersey, we're going to talk about. We have this thing of these parts of the story we want to look at. So first of all, I want you to think as you're reading the first few pages. And actually, this week you don't have to read the entire story because we're going to be using this for essay number 3 and 4, which will be starting after the 15th, I think. So, because we've still got to write a second draft of essay 2. But anyway, I want to get started with the reading because it's a little bit longer story than we had with Hills Like White Elephants. So you get a couple of characters in the story. You'll see this picture is relevant as you maybe. I mean, it's not really them, but it's two guys putting together a pool table. And one of the things that they do in their job, you'll see the main characters, is that they deliver and put together pool tables in and around New York, New Jersey area. So you'll see the characters. When does this take place? Well, you could take a look and see what you think. I don't think it ever really mentions a year. The author, Gino Diaz, wrote this. Now I'm trying to remember when it was published, late 90s, I think. But I believe this is probably about the 90s somewhere. But you can kind of decide if you think you can tell. You can even look up. I think it's very autobiographical. I have a feeling, but I don't know Gino Diaz's biography. I haven't really read a biography of him or story about him too much, but I have a feeling he's got some kind of personal experience that seems close to him, or he's just a very good writer. So sometimes writers make it feel that way. But anyway, we know it's in New Jersey. It talks about this town, Edison, New Jersey. It's near the end of the story. They mention some other places that if you wanted to Google, you could figure out exactly where they are. But this is when it probably happens, I think. So take a look at that. We want to know its setting. We always want to know where and when the story takes place. And then the language, much like Hemingway, I think Gino Diaz writes in a very deceptively simple way, I would say, because it's not really simple. There's a lot going on, kind of like we talked about the iceberg with Hemingway, right? Maybe a lot under the surface. And so it may be a little challenging to read this story, not so much to get through it, but to actually get to the heart of what's happening. So in that way, I think it's simple language. It seems simple, but then there's really a lot of complex ideas going on. But you won't probably see a lot of figurative language, a lot of metaphors, similes, symbols, and things like that you'll notice, but more concrete, factual, literal kind of language as you read through it. I think you'll be the judge of that. So, but be looking at those things if you can. The characters, the setting, the language, the point of view. Who's telling this? Is it being told about him or her, or is it I? So I is our first person. That's one of the first things to notice when you're reading a story, because it's a very different thing if you have a narrator who's just saying, I did this, I went here, that you only have their point of view. Whereas if you have a person saying he or she, they can be what you call omniscient. In other words, like God, they can understand and tell you everything. But if it's first person, we're only going to hear from that kind of narrow point of view, right? They're not going to be able to say what this other person was thinking, what this other person was feeling. They're only going to be able to say what I am thinking and feeling in that first person. And again, second person is pretty uncommon. But take a look at this and see what you're finding. First person, third person would probably be what's happening. Pay attention to that if you can as you're reading the story. Again, not a literature class, but just some tips to help you unravel the story a little bit as you use it for essay 3 and 4 when we get into that in a week or so. Themes. Of course, there are going to be some themes here. You might have a clue because the reading we have this week is called Economic Inequality, right? So what does it do to people? How do people feel when they're in a situation where they're face to face, maybe on the front lines or the very touch points of economic inequality? And you'll see in this story where you have people with a lot of money interacting with people who don't have a lot of money. And so I'm asking you to read that story, and I think you'll see later when we get into writing this essay how those two, the fictional story and then the economic inequality essay, go hand in hand to talk about some of the important themes in what we're reading this week. So take a look at both of those, and I think they'll help you And again, you have some time to read these because we're just reading the first half of the story this week, and then again by the 16th we'll be into essay 3 and 4. Here's just a little bit to set up the story a little bit. I think Junot Diaz does a great job of like setting up a comparison from the very beginning of the story. And so we have this image. You'll read this later when you get into reading the story. And again, this story is in the course content folder for week 3. There's usually a little subfolder. The way I set this up, it's too many folders. I think I'm going to change that, rearrange that a little bit. But hopefully you can find it. If you don't, let me know. But the story should be there in week 3. The first time we try to deliver the gold crown, the lights are on in the house, but no one lets us in. I bang on the front door and Wayne hits the back, and I can hear our double drum shaking the windows. Right then I have this feeling that someone is inside laughing at us. I like this beginning to the story. Wayne and his partner, and notice we have an I, so you can probably think is this first person or third person? We have an I telling the story, and that I is going to be one of our main characters. It doesn't say his name right away. Wayne is his partner at work. So they're working together and they're trying to get into this house to deliver the gold crown, which is I looked this up. I don't think I've ever seen one or used one. Maybe I have in a hotel or something, I don't know, but or a pool hall. But gold crown is a very expensive type of pool table that they're delivering. And I like this idea. This could be symbolic, right? We talked about themes. The idea that someone's on the inside, someone's on the outside. The person on the inside is laughing. Here we are trying to do our work, and they're inside laughing at us, So there could be something symbolic, but that's a beginning. And then down here, he talks a little bit, the narrator of the story talks a little bit about the customers. So they're delivering these expensive pool tables, having some trouble in the very first part of the story. You should see our customers: doctors, diplomats, surgeons, presidents of universities, ladies in slacks and silk tops who sport thin watches you could trade in for a car, who wear comfortable leather shoes. Most of them prepare for us by laying down a path of yesterday's Washington Post. Back when people actually read paper newspapers. This was in the 90s. Some people still do, but most people are reading the news online these days. But again, so they're laying out, it's kind of like, well, don't dirty up our nice carpet. We're going to put this newspaper down so you guys can come in and deliver these expensive pool tables, and all these prestigious, job titles here, different people who they deliver the table. So again, we're setting up a contrast, a comparison right on the first page, and that will go out throughout the story. So take a look at that, be aware of that as you read. And when we get to writing our third and fourth essay, we'll be talking about that a little bit, and this concept of economic inequality and some other things too, that and motivation and the American dream. There's all these things we can bring in that we'll talk about later, but this will get us started, hopefully, and get you started, on the story, which I think is a good story. All right, so reading summaries for week 3, again, pages 1 to 4. You don't have to read the entire story, but if you can just read those first 4 pages, again, Edison, New Jersey by Junot Diaz, and continue our weekly reading summaries in the discussion board. As always, when you're doing your discussion board, feel free to comment on somebody else's ideas, or to it should just be much like a class discussion that we would have if we were face-to-face. And I'm doing discussion boards with my face-to-face classes, not only online, because I find that they're really good. I'm already seeing we get a lot of good ideas in there, so I'm looking forward to reading these. I love this story in particular. I like the first one too, but I like this one a lot, and I think it gives us some good things to look at. Here's again our journal for week 3. I kept saying economic inequality. I think the actual title may be income inequality, but you get the point. Similar thing. This is something I took from the library at Morton, the Opposing Viewpoints database. So continue your journal writing. Again, these are not due. I think we're going to have these due week 14, and that's near the end of the semester. So not to worry about the journals, but I would urge you to kind of, don't wait until the last week. And then, again, because they're going to help us, I think, help you with writing each essay topic, because you'll be able to see how Junot Diaz's story and this one tie in together. All right, well, that is all I have. So I'm trying to keep it, this one, I think I'm under 10 minutes, so I'll stop talking. I hope you guys have a good week. As always, like I'm saying in all these videos, please send me an email or let me know if you have any questions.